Field phase is, well, one of Pokken's main mechanics, and I've seen throughout many of the years I've played, where people would think, oh wow, field phase is so boring, there's nothing to it, it's just like lots of other anime arena fighter games, such as the Naruto games, or other stuff like as bad as Jump Force, that type of comparisons. I would disagree with that, and throughout this entire video, I will discuss why I think field phase is actually pretty cool. And very in-depth if you were to look into it a bit more, but I can understand completely from an outsider's point of view or lower level player why this phase would seem totally unjustified for existing in this Pokemon fighting game. And it should just be like Tekken or a normal 2D fighting game, just like this. Well, first off, let me discuss what exactly goes on in field phase. Field phase is mostly a projectile phase, a bit. Many projectiles you see in this phase are widely different from one another compared to other characters. As you can see, Sceptile is mostly a trap-based character, but you can see standard projectiles from someone like Lucario, projectiles that set up with other attacks, such as with Pikachus, or can fake people out with Pikachus, or Shadow Mewtwo, who has a lot of different projectiles that can be repurposed into other moves using Miracle Eye. That is just how widely different they can be used, and why it makes it interesting for movesets for each character, because this means each character basically has two movesets in this game. One for a field phase, and obviously one for the duel phase. Even though some moves are shared between these phases, most dive kicks are usually the same between duel and field. There are some differences like Machamps or Garchomps, but as you can see right here, that does 80 damage and does a knockdown. This does 60 and is used for combos. Obviously, just getting a combo is much better than just getting a knockdown, but it's nice to have that different option that doesn't make it super overpowered, because combos in field phase are not really too much of a big thing. You usually just want to go for the straight hit. And why you want to go for a straight hit for a guaranteed field phase, which is mechanically very, very sound, is that you get a lot of benefits for winning. First off, you could probably see in the bottom left corner, you get a lot of meter. More meter than if you were to win duel phase. This is a big deal, because if you think about it, if this was only a 2D game, how would the meter management work? You would have to be like, okay, you get a lot more meter for all these, right? That's very simple, and you would be correct. But the way Pokken handles it is that by winning phases, you get a lot of meter. And there's another thing in field phase, actually, that benefits you for staying in field phase and paying attention to your own meter. And look, just on time. Every 10 seconds, these little nuggets will appear. And you get a lot of them, as you can see right there. Compared to, like, Sceptile, he's 200cc character, so that's a decent amount. But I do know for a fact that if you do win duel phase, which is another benefit for a two-phase system, is that they do appear right away. I think they appear right next to the person who lost the phase. Another benefit to duel phase, real quick, I can mention, for being a transitional type of game, is that the winner of duel phase gets some extra damage if they're near a wall because of a wall splat. This also removes gray HP, and the opponent gets to actually have an opportunity to reposition themselves. That is another thing I want to talk about field phase, though, is that repositioning is a great deal. Along with the fact that winning field phase also removes gray health for the opponent. So positioning in this game. If you've ever seen a tournament set where someone would move to the left a bit or to the right a bit, and then they attack, and you always wondered, why would they do that? Well, as you can see in the corner right here, if you phase shift like this, look how awkward this dual phase length is, and how it's really just positioned. Now, you'll see a lot of times when people get guaranteed punish and they have time to move around a bit because it's not like super tight window for punishing them. They will go like this or something similar. This will increase the length of the phase. So you have more room as the winner of the phase to make sure if you do make a mistake, you're not in the corner after one interaction, and makes it so that opponent has to really work their way out, because you could just keep moving back a bit and your opponent would still be somewhat against the wall. You can use a lot of the room you make to reposition yourself and outspace your opponent and then win another interaction possibly. It's a very unique option, and I think it's underutilized. Even I don't really use it too much because I just like going for big boy win phase, think later. Another really cool addition to field phase that was, I think, actually a oversight or a glitch or something that the developers just kept in because they probably thought it was also cool, is the concept of perfect blocking. Perfect blocking only exists in field phase unless you're Machamp. It consists of homing attacks. Now, homing attacks are a standard feature in this game for every character. Everyone's unique. Some are just better than others, like Shadow Mewtwo's is like the fastest and anti-airs, which is annoying. This is the one downside to Field Phase, is that this move exists. Homing attack has several features that can be utilized very effectively depending on how you can react to the situation. The one I want to talk about right now, and I'll probably get into the rest of it because that revolves around movement, is canceling into a guard. For single hit moves, if you were to guard at the last second, you get less hit stun or block stun. This makes moves that you wouldn't be able to punish punishable. And I think it's a fantastic mechanic that it is kept in because it brings much more depth to how you would deal with on single hit moves that you could usually react to, like Shadow Mewtwo's dive kick if you were to see it like move all the way full screen. But also many counterattacks. I picked bad characters because these guys have multi-hit counterattacks, but lots of counterattacks such as Lucario's or Pikachu Libre's, you would be able to, if they keep charging it up, you would definitely be able to react to it, guard it, and then possibly even punish it. I think Libre was actually another bad example. that Libre's kind of dumb with how much recovery she has, but Lucario definitely can do that for her. Like I said, this doesn't exist in Duel Phase. The only reason it works from a champ is because submission kind of works like a grab homing attack. There is no homing in Duel Phase. You can't just dash block. That doesn't count. Removing Field Phase will remove such a cool mechanic except for probably one character, if even, because they wouldn't bounce the game around a Field Phase, and so that would mean Machamp probably wouldn't even have submission be counted as a homing. Oh, whatever, I'm going on tangent. Going back to movement before I lose my insanity, is homing has other features. You can move to the left or right, which can help with avoiding projectiles, so it's not just, oh, I gotta keep blocking and moving forward, ah ha ha ha. You could also jump, of course. Certain characters also have other unique options for avoiding projectiles, such as Bullet Seed for Sceptile, which works as another type of jump, which is much more free. Didn't mention that, but jumps in this phase are a lot laggier compared to Duel Phase, which is honestly a very good balance point because you can just avoid everything with with a regular jump. And you can also cancel homing into jump. And of course, characters who have stuff like air dashes, such as Mewtwo right here, will still attain it in Field Phase. And you see right there, it's just very unique how many different moves that exist in Duel Phase will act a bit differently in Field Phase, or their functions are completely different, because this move, probably not the best to use in Duel Phase, but in Field Phase is pretty decent if you can lock the opponent down. Supports may also act differently, and Latios is the biggest example of this, because it goes from this, spinning lights that block the opponent from moving around, to just this, blocks him from behind. That's a big example. Other ones like Magneton, you can see in the top right I have set there, will have a different debuff it gives. That's like the only example of that happening. So the devs really thought how unique they wanted to make this phase for lots of different various reasons, even minor ones like Magnetons, which people don't even use Magneton, but it's nice that they thought of it. With all this information I've been giving on kind of like the mechanics of Field Phase, then you gotta start thinking, oh, when you start watching those tournament sets, you gotta think, oh, this is why people are going for these options. Like, why are they not going for each other? Oh, it's because they're almost at meter and they want to get the synergy nuggets. Or they want to shoot projectiles, which also give a small amount of meter. Not much, but it's a decent amount to where if you're like super, super close, it might make all the difference. Or, you know, just wait for the things right here. I brought up how positioning is a big deal and how notably Shadowcat's the one who does it the most. The Darkrai breaks the player that people seem to not like watching for some reason, even though he utilizes Field Phase very well and loves positioning himself so well when he's using Darkrai, because then he gets Bad Dreams Rising and then just gets this entire phase that he can mess up in, potentially, with a character who rarely messes up when he's in Bad Dreams Rising. I think he plays very well, and that's from someone who plays against him a lot. I'm not going on my breaks and propaganda nonsense again. I've already done like 3 videos on that. Perfect blocking is used a lot of the time for dealing with burst waves, and I failed it there, but you get what I mean. Usually a lot of time that's a hard read for Shadow Mewtwo to even do, because you could still simply just walk away. You have more time to walk away, or get close to them, which in Shadow Mewtwo's case is a thing you'd want to be aware of, because, well, his is punishable. There's several unique options you can do off of perfect blocking, even just burst wave. A lot of the time for other single hit moves, like say Leaf Blade, someone to do that with Leaf Blade, they would just punish you straight up because you're going to be super punishable. Like, you're already punishable enough if you block it. In fact, that goes all the way around to, hey, if you were to perfect block this move, then you can reposition yourself if needed, and I just feel like a genius for making that connection. So I feel like when it comes to a lot of the lower level players to just spectators, and I know the likelihood of this video actually catching the eyes of those people are minuscule, I think it's good to spread the word that Field Phase is pretty cool as a concept, and I want to even talk more about it in the fact that it has great meter management like opportunities. I already mentioned, oh yeah, winning the phases gets you meter. Getting the synergy nuggets gets you meter. Shooting projectiles gets you meter. Like, and hitting them gets you meter. 2 more things I want to bring up. two. Wait 1 second, I need to see. Yes, two things I want to bring up is one related to synergy nuggets. Now, we already know synergy nuggets appear after 10 seconds, and hopefully they'll appear right after this spiel. But cool thing you can do with a lot of characters who have traps is that you can position your projectiles to make sure they can't get into it without risking getting hit. It leads to a lot of opportunities, and you do kind of leave yourself wide open depending on the character if you are going to be spending the time setting up projectiles. At the beginning of every third round, I think the round begins with a large synergy nugget in the middle of the arena, so it's quite even for everyone. A lot of characters like Scissor could mostly get it for free because Neutral Y is a pretty dumb trap move that just covers space, but Subtile also has something like that. You could use a lot of your projectiles to make sure your opponent is not positioned in a way to try to get these nuggets, and you prevent them from getting burst. This is something I didn't really mention too much, but when you win the phase, you prevent your opponent from getting the benefits. Obviously, you get the benefits. That means your opponent doesn't get them. And if your opponent is close to getting meter, maybe they'll get it from getting hit, but maybe they won't. And then they don't get meter from winning the phase or the nuggets or just shooting projectiles. A second thing for meter management is the fact that countering moves get you meter as well. This, well, of course, is pretty obvious in Duel Phase for how you'd want to use it, besides just countering attacks. Like, you see how much meter I got from there? Well, now imagine in this phase. This phase is all about projectiles. Counterattacks usually would just want to be used to try to, as the name would suggest, counterattack. What makes this a very funny dynamic between opponent and yourself is that if you're close to meter or are just trying to gain meter, you can do this to their projectiles from far away and then dash cancel away most of the time, and you'd be able to get meter for free. And your opponent will have to realize at a certain point, if you're so close to meter, maybe I shouldn't shoot projectiles. Or they could also think, maybe, hey, I could try to bait them into countering over and over again to steal my meter, get them into a position where I can do a safer move that will beat them out of their dash or counter frames, and win the phase that way. There's a lot of depth to this, and most people don't see that, which I've already mentioned before. This is a lot of like knowledge stuff that you'd have to know to like really fully realize what's going on, and from just a spectator's point of view, I completely understand. But there's just so much more in this phase that meets the eye. Autobots roll out, like, it's just crazy what you can do with each character's unique setups to utilize the mechanics of everything I've mentioned thus far. I know I can see some being like, oh wow, you win the phase? Why do you get health recovery? I forgot if I mentioned that. You get great health recovery. Your opponent loses great health. You are at frame advantage. And you get meter, and your opponent doesn't get any of that. That seems stupid. But the game makes it work. There's a lot of times where you'll see people who lose phases consistently get meter first. It's crazy. Like, how you position yourself in both duel and field. And I guess this actually brings me up to how duel would probably be super hard to exist without field. I've seen a video by, I forgot their name, it'll be on screen and their link will be in the description, where they talk about how there is a certain mode where you'd have to play split screen, but not in the way how Wii U intended it for single player battles with someone else, in that you could use a Wii U gamepad and a TV monitor. Nintendo Switch makes that pretty hard to do. You'd either have to play from this perspective and the second player plays as Shenmue 2 just as is, or there's a split screen. I think the game goes down to 30 frames per second, at least with the split screen, and it makes it very difficult to actually play the game consistently. And their thought process was they should just get rid of field phase for this one mode. I think it was just this one mode, and it just wouldn't work that way because Subtile, the main reason I actually am using him for this video, is that he's the easiest example of what could happen. You get rid of phase shift points, the things that prevent people from getting infinites, and then Subtile can do his basic bread and butter combo of over and over and over again, which only happened like that because of phase shift points that bring you back into field. And it's not like a rampage that Subtile's going to do even with the phase shift win, because you, like I mentioned, you get to reposition yourself as the person who loses the phase. You get to air tech in any direction you want. The opponent can still set it up on you if you were to lose the phase, but it's a lot better of a position than being knocked down in the corner over and over again, which is kind of like the risk versus reward sometimes in duel phase, because you'd want to be like, oh, do I actually want the phase shift? Most of the time you would. Sometimes you might not want to. Sometimes you may want to actually just reset them, because this burst wave actually resets phase shift points, which is a benefit of duel phase, but I won't go too deep into it. Just know that's an option and helps with how you want to determine if you want to go into field phase or not. People who hate field phase just do that all the time. But Infinite City, yeah, you're gonna be in here forever. The infinite loop generator. But also just Pokken's whole, yes, look how free this movement is. Look how cool we can make our characters by having all this free movement. That would not exist without a field phase, I feel, because they'd have to restructure their entire gameplay to prevent infinites such as this. Sceptile in a game without a field phase and could just add infinites would probably not even have this combo route to begin with of just 2 moves, 2 buttons. Now imagine that for every other character in this entire game. It would be an entirely different game, and I mentioned it in their video, which I still think is a pretty good video. I like it a lot. They brought up some good points, and it was mostly on just like the casual side of things, so I totally understand their thought process for this. Nothing against them, of course, but you wouldn't be able to have a dual phase without a field phase with these mechanics that make Pokken so unique. That entire argument revolves around how Wii U handled things compared to DX, and I do think Wii U handled it better because it did have 2 screens that you can use, but if you're going to change all that, you're either going to get infinites or you're going to have Pokkén 2 and not actual Pokkén Tournament DX for the Nintendo Switch system. So there are 3 last things I want to bring up before I forget. One of them being, I forgot Casco in here, sorry buddy. The second thing being, you've seen me mention meter management so much in this video. How it pertains to field phase, how you get it for winning phases, how you wait for nuggets, how you shoot projectiles. Now imagine a 2D fighter and you have an entire restructure of how you gain meter because you don't have any of the field phase stuff in here now. You gain most of your meter in this game through combos and field phase. So if it's only combos, it's going to be a lot less meter than what I actually got because I actually won the phase. You'd have to increase it a bunch, and characters already have different meter sizes. How you would balance that, I would have no idea. It just seems like so convoluted of a thing just to remove this one phase. And another convoluted thing I want to mention is that this, how I keep going back into field phase right here. This is the normal round start distance for Pokken when it comes to Ferrum, at least. I already talked about it in the video, all the stages and stuff, but we're not going to talk about that. You guys can go watch that on your own. So how would that work in Duel Phase? You could make the argument that this would be the round start size, but if you've seen other fighters, they usually start somewhat more near each other, like perhaps around here. With how Pokken handles frame data and how characters usually function in Duel Phase, you'd probably have to change a bunch of characters' movesets. And they would just lose the character's identity, not just the game's identity for how mechanics work. Because then you have to consider, oh, what could Sceptile do at round start distance that would be super ignorant? Bullet Seed. Just bam, Bullet Seed. You want to think of, oh yeah, just start from over here. Projectile users like Chandelure and Gardevoir are already going to be like botting people in Field Phase, but Field Phase has a 3-dimensional thing that you can go left and right in at the very least to try to avoid projectiles. And, well, another movement thing I completely forgot about is that side dashes also lose the homing properties of projectiles who have it. They help you get out of the way. But if you don't have that, you can only really jump. And many characters like Chandelure especially have anti-airs, which are not only just frame 1, but are big, and are specifically used in conjunction with certain projectiles to force jumps and then punish you. Sceptile is also kind of like that when it comes to traps, because he has this move and an air command grab. And I think everyone knows that this round start distance would be terrible. Like grab range? Oh yeah, sure, I want to deal with that grappler. I want to deal with the grappler. Especially with Champ, his 2i hits high and low, and it goes into a full combo if you jump. And it's frame 11, which is the fastest in the game. No, I wouldn't want to deal with that. That would not be okay in a fighting game. So as you can see, all 3 distances have their detriments to them, to the point where you'd have to remake the entire game itself. And maybe if it was in a Pokken 2, like you don't like Field Phase and you wish for it to be in a Pokken 2, but for the current game mechanics right now and trying to just be like, man, Pokken would be so much better if everything was the same except for Field Phase didn't exist, it would be worse. I'm just gonna say that it would be a lot worse, and it just comes from people who don't know exactly the entire intricacies of Field Phase and how that relates to Duel Phase. People just see it as black or white, just Field Phase or Duel Phase, but don't consider the middle gray part. And I've mentioned it like twice over already, but it's understandable from a perspective of just a beginner or a spectator. But I hope this video really helped a lot of people figure it out. Yeah, maybe this phase isn't so bad. Maybe I should look into it. And if you still don't like it, fine. But I think saying it would benefit Pokken is factually wrong. I want to say that with a question mark because I know most people don't like it. So maybe you would be right. Most people would be into the game then. But after a while, I feel like people would be saying, oh, that's actually terrible. That's actually awful now that there's infinites from a bread and butter combo. That's the end of the video, but this is a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while because Field Phase gets a bad rap for even existing just because it acts like those arena fighter games, even though it acts very much so differently. And I would say it's probably, if this game was just an arena fighter, it was just these mechanics. That said, I'd have to make a video on the reverse of how didn't know Duel Phase would affect field phase. I think it would be a lot better than most other arena fighters. I heard Naruto games are pretty good, but definitely stuff like Jump Force would be way better. So yeah, have a great one, guys. Yes, I agree, Septile. Field phase is in fact very cool.